Good
Yep,
morning.
I'm good.
Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. This is a regular meeting. It is Wednesday, January 18th, 2023. It is 9:05 a.m. This session is set to go until 10 a.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at the HM 3000 Pacific Avenue Southeast, room 110. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. Vice Chair Ty Menser joining us via Zoom. Commissioner Gary Edwards to my left. Also in the boardroom, we have County Manager Ramiro Chavez, Community Planning and Economic Development Director Joshua Cummings, and Chris Chapeau, who's a program manager, planning manager.
She's the one who does it.
Yeah, she's okay, and so the discussion today is the 2022 through 2023 Official Comprehensive Plan and Development Code Dockets Mid-Cycle Check-in.
Yep, thank you, Commissioners. This is a yearly event in a way that you go through the process of seeing, first of all, the progress of all the elements on the comprehensive plan, the development code docket. And there's a little bit mid-cycle where you have the opportunity to have two options in here, whether to continue with the list that you have entrusted the staff to deliver. And also you may have the opportunity to hear and make some decisions on new items that we have received. And I believe most of the items were received on the deadline, which is prior to November 15th or so of 2022. And the staff will walk you through some of those options related to the new items. So those are the really the gist of this conversation. So with that, is it Maya?
So yeah, I'll just jump in real quick and just provide appreciation to the Board of County Commissioners, the Planning Commission and staff. Over the years, our team has worked to find efficiencies to make sure that we move the legislative items that are presented to us from applicants, whether they be from citizens, the board, or staff, and trying to serve our community better. And I just thank you very much for the direction that's been provided, the hard work of the Planning Commission, and the process improvements that the staff has made over the years. We're working to analyze how we can continue to make things move along in an expedient manner. Now that we've worked out some of the bugs, we're finding more and more opportunities for efficiency in the process itself. And so in the past, we've talked about staff resources, but I think we're gonna start to shift towards process improvements even more. And that is in the way that the Planning Commission reviews items and provides recommendations to the board, and how the board then proceeds to make the next steps to public hearing and then potential adoption of those items. So I just want to make sure that we're all clear that this is an opportunity for a mid-cycle check-in. The board has already provided direction on prioritization and the number of docket items that we're working on. And Maya and Chris will talk more to the process, but just wanted to have that brief opening saying thank you, and that the staff continues to find ways to create efficiency. With that, I'll kick it over to Chris and have them take it away.
Actually, I'll just have Maya go ahead and start.
All right, Maya, you ready? Even though you can't see us, we're really here, I promise.
Yes, I am. Thank you, everyone. And I see the presentation is already shared, so I'll just ask whoever is sharing that to forward to the next slide when I'm ready. But for the record, Maya Tipo, Senior Planner with Community Planning, as the County Manager so wonderfully summarized today's briefing is a mid-cycle check-in on the official dockets. And this is an annual briefing. We do this every year. But the Board of County Commissioners does set a biennial docket, and it covers a biennium, so it's from 2022 to 2023. And that means that we're doing that mid-cycle check-in. We're halfway through that docket year cycle, and we don't need to take an action this year, but there's the opportunity for the board to if they wish to. So I will power through this presentation. It's only about 12 slides, and I ask that you hold your questions to the end so we have time to go over everything, and then we'll have time for a discussion. So just to give an overview of the docketing process, this is the general process, and we are at the top here. So we do a preliminary docket review, and this is where we go over any new proposals we've received, and we do a status check on everything that's on the official dockets. And that's really the first stage of docketing. But there's many more stages after that, and that takes quite a bit of time to run through all of those. If the Board of County Commissioners wishes to add new proposals, then there is a 20-day comment period. The board then has another briefing or several briefings after that comment period to review public testimony and consider the new proposals. And after that comment period, the board can discuss adding or removing proposals to the official dockets. The prioritization step comes at the very end of all of this, so only after the board has taken a final action to adopt the official dockets. As I said, this is a mid-cycle check-in, so we have an official docket for the comp plan and the development, development code that runs through the end of 2023, but the board does have the option to go through this full process if they wish to consider adding new proposals midway through this docket cycle. Next slide. So what are the dockets? We have 2 dockets, and we bring them forward to the Board of County Commissioners at the same time because the same staff works on both of these dockets. But there are 2 primary ones: the Comprehensive Plan Amendment docket, which includes proposals that change the land use, they change policies, it changes to the general guiding document that sets the 20-year vision for Thurston County. And those are the visionary changes. And then we have the Development Code Amendment docket, and that includes changes to the Thurston County codes. So the regulations that are implemented during permitting, that's where the rubber really meets the road. As I mentioned, the same staff works on both of these. So we've brought these together at the same time for the board to consider the proposals holistically. Next slide. So why do we docket? Docketing is a requirement under state law, and it's required by the Growth Management Act. It's also required in the Thurston County Code. So Chapter 2.05 outlines docketing for Thurston County, and it outlines the process that's involved with that. One of the most important reasons of docketing is that it informs the public very early about the proposals that the Board of County Commissioners might consider over the upcoming years, and it also helps build a work plan and a budget for the Community Planning Growth Management Services Division. So this is where the County Commissioners has the opportunity to set our work plan for the upcoming year or in a reset year for the upcoming 2 years. Next slide. And every year we get new proposals. These can come from a variety of different pathways. The first is board initiated proposals. So the board has the opportunity to bring items forward if they wish to create a proposal or have staff work on something specific. There are citizen initiated proposals, and this is a big bulk of the new proposals that we see every year. So we accept applications from any citizen on a rolling basis, and folks can submit new applications up until November 15th, and then we will bring all of those applications to the board. There's also staff initiated proposals, and those are typically from our permitting staff or from community planning staff that involve corrections either to the development code or to the comprehensive plan, or their updates for consistency in our processes. And then there's legally required updates, and those are updates that are required by state law. Staff tracks those, and we'll bring those forward as well. Next slide. So the options for the county commissioners today, we are asking for direction from the county commissioners by next Tuesday, and the Board of County Commissioners have 2 options before them. The first is the do nothing option. And so staff will continue to work on the official dockets through the end of 2023 based on the priorities and the work plan that the board set early last year. And so we've made a lot of good progress. We would just continue to work on that, and then all of the new proposals would come back before the board in early 2024 with that option. The second option is if the board wishes to consider adding new proposals, they can direct staff to move forward and hold a 20-day written comment period. And so there is some staff time that's incurred with that. It pushes everything out about 3 to 5 months, but we would hold that comment period. We would bring back public comment and all of the new proposals, and then we'll have further discussions on which proposals to add to the docket, if any. Next slide, please. So what did we complete in 2022? 2022 was the first year of our 2-year docket cycle on these official dockets, and we had 27 officially docketed items between the 2 dockets. We complete 6 different items over the last year. One of those is a comprehensive plan amendment item on the right of this slide. That's the capital improvement program. That's something we do every year, and it restarts every year as it's required under state law. And then we, community planning, got through 5 separate development code amendments to include the Habitat Conservation Plan Implementation Ordinance, Low Impact Development code changes, the boundary line adjustment standards, non-conforming code update, the emergency housing ordinance update, and where we've made significant progress on several more, but those were the 6 that we completed over the last year. And a lot of those have been in progress for quite some time. So that was a great accomplishment to get some of those off of the table. Next slide. So just giving a status update on some of the other officially docketed items. So as I've mentioned, we've continued to make great progress on a lot of other items. This is not a comprehensive list, but I will go over some very quickly just to note where we are with a lot of these. And in the attachments packet on pages 2 and 3, and then also on pages 20 and 21, are more detailed descriptions of where each proposal is in the process. But just to summarize, so our Shoreline Master Program, we continue to work very diligently on that. Late last summer, the Planning Commission made a recommendation, and that will be before the board very soon. We anticipate final action this year. Our Tumwater UGA zoning ordinance updates, we completed, thanks to the board in 2021, the Tumwater Joint Plan. And we are moving forward with that UGA zoning ordinance update. The city is very excited about that. That's been kind of in the hopper for a very long time. So we are beginning work on that. That's a very tedious and complex code update that will involve a lot of staff work over the next year. Forest conversions and tree protections, code changes. So Planning Commission review will begin early this spring. And then the agricultural activities critical areas ordinance. Recently, the board had a briefing on that, and soon that will be coming before the board for a hearing. So that is a development code update that is very close to nearing completion, is what we like to say. Following that board public hearing, we'll move forward on that. And then there are several other code amendments, including signboard procedures, clerical errors, and considering on expansion of non-conforming non-residential uses. All 3 of those are going to be starting with Planning Commission early this spring, and we expect to complete those before the end of the year. To go over some of the comp plan items, the Grand Mound Sub-Area Plan, we have been working with the Planning Commission on that for several months now. It's been with Planning Commission since September, and they are working very hard on that. We've gotten through several recommendations on components of that plan, and we expect to complete Planning Commission review on that very soon. After that, it'll go to a special subcommittee, and then it will come to the Board of County Commissioners for review. The community-driven review of agriculture, that is a Planning Commission initiated docket item and also has a legal component tied to it. We are working with a stakeholder group and we'll be nearing the end of that process later this spring, and then Planning Commission review will pick up on that. There are other components of this community-driven review of agriculture that are coming before the board soon, like updates to an open space tax program, so a lot of good work is going with that. The industrial land study, we have a consultant hired and they are working on that study. They'll be working on that study through the remainder of the year. Joint plan updates, we've made significant progress on the Olympia Joint Plan. That is nearing the end of its review with our Planning Commission, and that will be coming to the board later this year. And then the City of Lacey Urban Growth Area Joint Plan, we are working with the city to get that plan underway and start working on the Lacey Joint Plan. And then the Capital Improvement Program, as I mentioned, that restarts annually, and CPED really just organizes and chauffeurs that one through. So this is not a full list of everything that's on the official docket right now. There are still some lower priority items based on the board's prioritization last spring that we haven't taken up yet, and we don't have staff assigned at this time. But as we start completing projects, staff will move to those other projects. So next slide, just to go over some successes and looking at capacity over the next year. So as I mentioned, 6 items complete in 2022. We're very close on a lot of other items, the agricultural activities, CAO, wireless, some of the community-driven ag review projects. Lots of work is ongoing, and some of the other docket items are near completion. So we have 21 officially docketed items. Some of those are pretty close to the end. Can those 21 items be done by the end of 2023? There is a typo on this slide that says 2 years. It should say 1 year, since we have 1 year left in our current docket cycle. Not with our current staffing, it's more likely 2+ years of work given the Planning Commission review time, the current workload, and then what goes into each of these proposals to include public engagement. Each staff can probably complete 1 to 2 proposals per year. So we would expect that by the end of 2023, we can get through roughly 5 to 10 proposals. So a good amount of what's still on the current official dockets. Not everything, but a very good amount, between 50 and 75% probably. And then I'll go over big ticket items. We go over this every year. So there are some items that take longer than a 2-year docket cycle. And that's because there's a high level of public engagement. They take a significant amount of review time with our planning commission, or there's just a lot of public engagement that causes more discussions after a public hearing has been held. And some of those include Grand Mound, wireless code update. The Nisqually sub-area plan is one that we expect will have a lot of public engagement, countywide industrial land study. Those are all items that can take longer because of that level of public engagement and the review time that goes with the Planning Commission. Next slide. So the exciting part, what's new in 2023? We've received 8 new proposals, and so 5 carrying over from our preliminary docket last year that the board did not officially docket. That's 13 new preliminary proposals. And I will go over both what's been carried over from the preliminary docket last year and also the new applications that we received by the end of 2022. So looking at our comprehensive plan proposals, 6 of the 13 are comp plan changes. The first one on this slide in the top left is the Upcastle proposal. You'll see a second box with Upcastle in it. They have submitted a second application that has a slightly different code change to it that they're requesting. The rezone request is the same. So the application is requesting that a rezone be done on about 33 acres from rural residential resource 1 to 5 to rural resource industrial, and a subsequent code change. And the difference between the 2 items is the code change. That property is on the south border of the county, bordering Lewis County. And we've done quite a bit of work on the request already. It's gone through Planning Commission. It's had a Planning Commission recommendation made of no change on both the rezone and the previous code amendment that the applicant submitted. And that still remains on the preliminary docket at this time. The next proposal is the Black Lake Quarry rezone request, land use amendment, and code amendment. That's a request to amend about 270 acres. It's southwest of the Tumwater UGA. It's not bordering the UGA, but it's in proximity to it. And the current zoning is rural 1 to 20, and they're requesting be changed to rural resource industrial. There's also a code amendment change to the rural resource industrial chapter that would go along with that one. The Scott proposal, which is the top right, is a request to amend 54 acres from rural 1 to 20 to rural residential resource 1 to 5, and that's located in southwest Thurston County. On the bottom left, we have the Thurston 2045, which is Thurston County's periodic comprehensive plan update. Although it feels like we just finished this, we have our next periodic comprehensive plan update due in June of 2025. This is a legally driven docket item, and there will be funding tied to that, grant funding that's available through the state, but we will talk in detail more about that in March with its standalone briefing. The bottom right is the Port of Tacoma rezone and land use amendment request. And there is also a code amendment request with that one as well. That is 746 acres, and they're requesting to rezone from rural 1 to 20 to rural residential, rural resource industrial. So that's a big land use change in the middle of Thurston County. Next slide, please. Going over new and rollover development code proposals. So there are 7 that are either rolling over or new applications that we received late last year. First one is a no shooting zones development code amendment, and this was a board item that was brought forward last year to the preliminary docket. There's been a lot of public comment over the years related to shooting zones, and this would be a wholesale look at those across the whole county. Ultimately, the board left this item on the preliminary docket last year, so it returns to you this year. The next one is SEPA comment periods. This is another board initiated item that was brought forward to consider adjusting SEPA timelines. Again, this is just an item that we've gotten a lot of public comment on over the last several years. There are some limitations on shortening timelines under state law, but this docket item would look into that and evaluate what kind of flexibility we have, if any. It was left on the preliminary, so it comes back this year. The next item is an update to code language to adjust the adult family home definition in the development regulations. This is a staff initiated item from Development Services, and it updates our current code language for consistency with state law. There has been changes in state law definitions on how many residents are allowed under adult family homes, and it increases that number. So we would just be updating the language for consistency with that. The next item is standards for binding site plans. This is the top right, and this is a staff initiated item from Development Services. The ask here is to develop standards for binding site plans. We currently reference binding site plans in the county code, but there are no standards for it specifically. On the bottom left, we have reasonable use exceptions amendments, and there are 2 parts to this item. The first would be to remove a recording requirement with the auditor, and the second would be to develop an administrative review pathway for utility repair and replacement projects. This is brought by Development Services staff, and these are both procedural improvements recommended by the Development Services team who does the permitting. The next item is clarifying changes to Title 20. This is a 2-part code item that just adds clarifying language where it doesn't exist in our county code. The first piece would be regarding storage containers in residential zones. There's not currently any language in the county code on whether that's prohibited or allowed, so this would add clarification in, so there is specific language on that. And then the second piece of this is to add permitting standards related to mobile food trucks. So currently we don't have any standards for mobile food trucks. They are permitted, and permitting staff has been relying on temporary use permit and other land use code language, but adding clarifying language in there would make it clear for permitting staff and also for applicants who are applying for those types of permits. And then the last item on this slide on the bottom right is cannabis related amendments. These are several different code amendments related to cannabis in the county code. This is a citizen initiated item, and some of the changes that the citizen is requesting is to replace the term marijuana with cannabis, which is consistent with how state law has started to refer to marijuana and cannabis. Consider revisions to setbacks and lot sizes where cannabis is allowed for outdoor cannabis operators. Specifically, the citizen is requesting they be reduced, and we would look into and evaluate that as part of that code item. And then finally, revising county definitions around cannabis. So there are some limitations for outdoor cannabis being considered an agricultural activity, which ends up requiring permits for buildings and such. So the applicant asked that we look into that and consider revising it. None of those cannabis related updates are legally required, but they are all citizen requested. So they're coming for us one docket item. Next slide, please. So next steps, just to recap the options for the board today, we are requesting direction from the board by the 24th, so next Tuesday. The board does not need to take an action on the dockets this year, but has the option to if they want to consider adding new items. So the first option is do nothing to the dockets, just direct staff to continue working on the official dockets through the end of 2023. We'll continue with those priorities set by the board last March. And the second option is if the board wishes to consider adding new proposals, then they can direct staff to hold a 20-day written comment period. And as I mentioned, that pushes timeline about 3 to 5 months. It typically takes us through the end of April to get through all of that. And so that's my presentation. I'm happy to open it up to questions now.
Maya, real quick, can you define the pushing of 3 to 5 months? Is that just for the new stuff or everything?
It's primarily for the new items, but it does push my staff time from existing docket items gets redirected to the docketing process. So, and there are other staff that are involved in the comment period and taking in comments. So it doesn't impact the workflow on other docket items. It can slow the work on those items as well. Probably about 3 months.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up for questions, but before Maya, what you're requesting from us, is it today or is it going to be the 24th?
I'll bring this item on the 24th, I think you.
Okay, and so what you're requesting is for us to either go with option 1 or option 2, but not go into each of the items, the new items that are being proposed if we decide to go with item 2. Is that correct? That's correct.
That is correct.
So if I may, if the board decides to go with option 2, then there will be a public comment on the new items. And there will be another decision point for the board based on the public comment, whether you'd like to include those items on the docket, preliminary docket, or not.
Okay.
So that is a different decision point the board will have after the public comment. So you're right. So on Tuesday, the board will exercise your decision. Option 1, do nothing. And option 2, moving on to the public comment on the items.
Taking time away for your legislative update is, you know, when you're adding all these decisions.
That decision will be quick. I'm just kidding.
Okay, so we'll start it off with questions and then we'll go from there. Commissioner Edwards, we'll start with you, sir.
I guess my question would be, why not have the 20-day written comment period so we can hear from the public and see what they think is the most important rather than us picking and choosing winners and losers?
So the why not goes to the timing. So when the board asks us, how come you haven't completed more of the docket items, it directly relates to shifting gears. So if you decide on option 2, that's a gear shift, and we move the resources that are currently underway with what you've already affirmed to then take in that public comment, which takes staff time, and then have the board briefings, and then discuss whether or not you want to add that item. And so all of that has a trickle effect on the other work that's happening. So that would be the con of going with option 2. Is that it directly relates to your guys' request for us to keep things moving?
Okay, I guess I don't see where having a public comment bothers any of what you've explained, other than setting up a public hearing at some point to hear from the public. I mean, if we don't make the decision to move forward on X or Y, then I don't see where it'd have a impact on staff.
Yeah, a lot of what you see here in this briefing, there's a lot of background work that goes into every one of these briefings. And that's the staff time that
I just want more production from staff, whether, you know, if it takes you 5 hours to do something or whatever, get it done in 3. Nothing aggravates me more than to see someone with a high school education override a civil engineer's, proposal, you know, and we act like we know everything, and which I don't think we do know everything. I
So-
don't know a lot.
It's completely the board's decision. If you
No.
guys wanna have the other items that you've already affirmed, slow down to have open public comment.
Well, that's
totally-
almost a blackmail to the board is the way I look at it.
It's
I-
your guys'
That's
discretion.
really your decision, but
Okay.
to answer your question, on a more, high level conversation, you're absolutely correct that I think you need to have a public perspective
Yeah,
before
that's all.
you make an informed decision. That's part of
Okay.
a public process. And so fundamentally, you're absolutely on point. That, before the board can take any action related to this very important issue, you need to have public, input. So that is, I don't think the argument is on that. I think it's the conversations among your seatmates, whether you like to exercise the public, process with the new items. That is a
I
conversation.
wanna
you
hear,
can-
okay, I'm just gonna say that I wanna hear from the public on everything that is proposed. I don't agree with everything that's
Yeah,
proposed,
that's.
but I wanna hear from the public to see what they think is the
Absolutely,
priority.
that is
And
absolutely.
I'm ready to vote on it today, because I don't like to, we always do this bureaucratic delay process. Okay, we'll wait a week and then we'll make a decision. And well, maybe we'll do something else and move it down. It just takes a lot of time that I don't see as necessary. Now, I've never been a planner, so I could be all wet on the whole thing. And I'm not an engineer and I've never overruled an engineer.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the staff who is working on the development conduct is our college educated. They're not high school graduates.
I'm
so
just using
just
that
wanna
as a
clarify,
over-the-counter
They're
perspective. of
well
what people
educated,
see.
and absolutely they know what they're doing.
But I think, let me go back to the county manager's point, because he's right on. That, and so, to your point, this meeting that we're in right now is exactly that opportunity for the public to have engaged. This is the transparent process where all of the applications are available if a Board of County Commissioner would like to review them. So the meeting that you're requesting to get input from the public, you're in it. It's happening right now. Like, this is that opportunity to hear what has been applied for, and then for the board to engage with whomever they would like in the community. We just, as staff, want to make sure to honor the board's direction that you provided last year on the prioritization of the items. We will do what the board directs, but you asked what would be wrong or the problem with opening it up. And the one thing that it is just slows things down a little bit. So we don't have a value judgment either way. We work at the discretion of the board. You give us the direction.
Is this all the public gets to see? You say today is their input. We're doing the
So
input.
up to February 24th, I think, is when the decision point was gonna be made? Is that what the board just
Yeah.
decided?
I wanna
January
hear what the
24th
public
was when we were asking for direction.
Thank you, sorry.
Okay.
Commissioner Menzer, questions, comments?
Yes. So, is it an all or nothing for the public comment? I mean, if the board was interested in one, like if Maya says, well, we really have to do the comp plan update and there's money attached, and so then we have to do a public comment period. Is it better to just put them all up, or is there some value to us only putting one or two or three that we actually care about and flushing the ones that we're not gonna go forward on? Does it matter? Or is it better to do what Commissioner Edwards said and just, if we're gonna put one up, we might as well just put them all up and see what people have to say and then go from there?
Go
Yeah.
for it.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead, Maya, you got it.
I was going to say the county commissioners can, I would recommend including all of them because you're going to get comments on all of them, regardless of whether or not they're included on the preliminary docket for public comment, and it's transparent for the citizens.
So
So
aren't you gonna tell us that at least the comp plan update ought to be included, or else staff wouldn't have proposed that it be included? And if that's true, then why don't we just pick option 2 and be done? I mean, it sounds like if we're gonna need public comment on one thing, you're saying, and I'm agreeing, we probably might as well just have public comment on all the things.
yeah, that's a great point, Commissioner Menzer. The comp plan does actually not need to be docketed this year. We are just bringing it forward for the board's awareness because we know you're hearing public comments on it. But if the board chooses option 1 and does not hold a comment period this year on anything, That doesn't mean they won't get comment period. That just means that pushes that comment opportunity to early 2024. And everything will come back in early 2024 and be reconsidered. That's a reset year, so we will need to hold a comment period at the beginning of next year. But to respond to the comp plan point, that does not need to be docketed this year. We don't expect to take an action this year, so early next year would be sufficient.
So why do we even have this on this list right now?
It's just to
Just-
bring it for the board's awareness because we're receiving public comments on it.
Okay, so I got confused on the numbers of slides that talk about, if we could go to, well, we don't have to go to the slide, but you say there's 8 new proposals and 5 carryover, and then it says 6 new are comp plan amendments. So I thought, okay, that means 2 are development code. But then the next slide says there are 8 new proposals and 5 carryover. 7 new proposals are development code. So those numbers don't add up. 7
Yep.
plus 6 is 13.
Yep, sorry about that. So the 8 new proposals plus the 5 carryover items is the 13 total. So you are seeing both new proposals and items that were left on the preliminary docket last year. So there were a couple of items, 5, that were not officially docketed, and those come back as new proposals this year. So we're really looking at 13, and that's where the 6 and 7 comes from.
So can we go to slide, okay, the slide you're on, can you tell me which of those are new versus which ones are carryover? Just on the
Yes.
6 comp plan.
Absolutely. So the carryover ones are the top 3, and the new proposals on the slide are the bottom 3.
And so for
So-
the public viewing, this is on page of attachment A, it's on page 4 and also page 21. And it kind of gives it a little bit more of a clearer breakdown on the carryovers from last year and the new proposals. So page 4 and page 21.
Okay, so just looking at those, for example, the comp plan you're saying is not gonna, that really doesn't have to worry, we don't have to worry about that. The Port of Tacoma, I actually know a little bit about that because I met with those folks, and so I have kind of a preliminary thought about that. And then the Upcastle 2 is really, I'm calling it Upcastle 2 because there's an earlier Upcastle, is really a reconfiguration of the one that we already preliminarily docketed. I mean, we didn't put Upcastle 1 on the docket.
That's correct. So Upcastle, it was on a previous docket, and we did a lot of work on that. They have reapplied with a slightly different code change, and so that's why you see that twice.
Okay, so that's a little clear. Now, if we go to the development code, can you tell me the 2 that are new out of the book? Cannabis?
Yes, so on this slide, there are 2 that are carryover, and that's the no shooting zones and the review SEPA comment period timelines. Those were considered early last year, and they were left on the preliminary docket. The other 5, the adult family homes, finding site plans, reasonable use exception amendments, clarifying changes to Title 20 and cannabis-related amendments, are all new items that we received in 2022.
And as I was cross-referencing these items in the packet, the other packet that we have, I was noticing that a number of those that you just ticked through are staff initiated.
That's correct. Number of
it's-
these, all of them except for the cannabis-related amendments, come from development services.
Okay, so I mean, Josh is kind of like, okay, Josh is being very cautionary, like, hey, if you move forward on new stuff, you're gonna at a minimum delay things for 3 months while we take public comment, and then potentially more if we accept them on the docket. But these proposals are coming from staff, so staff themselves are basically telling the board, set a public comment period and add these to your docket. We think these are important, or you would have waited till next year.
So
Right.
Commissioner Mintzer, can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
So the key part of Maya's statement is they're coming from CPED Development Services, not community planning. So Development Services and Brett Burris's group, they've been tasked with finding efficiencies to help applicants. And so every opportunity they get, they come up with new ideas, and that's why it comes to this process. The Development Services group is not making a judgment on whether or not the board should open up the docket or not. I've asked the permitting group to come up with new ideas to help the citizens. And it's up to the board to decide if any of those rise to the level of opening up the docket. So you have to think of CPED in the two main divisions. Community planning is Chris and Maya. Development services is Brett Burris and the permitting group. Is that
So
helpful?
they're gonna throw, I get it, thank you, that's helpful, because what you're saying is development code staff's gonna throw up good ideas without any regard to timing, staffing,
Correct.
resources, where all the other items are in the queue. They're just gonna throw them up so that the board has the opportunity to grab onto them and move them forward if they
You got
think
it.
we're. Okay, cool. Well, uh, I guess just as a thought, I mean, probably one of those is is important, is enough to move forward, but I mean, quickly. They're probably all important, but just random questions. So when you were talking about the items that you were kind of ticking through what we've accomplished and or what's like, or actually it's number 9, status update, and all the important ones you say are nearing completion. You didn't mention the Grand Mound submit update, which is the #1 priority of the board. So I'm wondering why.
Yes, I'm sorry. I thought I did mention that, but the Grand Mound Sub-Area Plan, it has made significant progress through Planning Commission. We've held several work sessions with our Planning Commission since late August or last September. And it's still in review with our Planning Commission. They've made several recommendations on components of the Grand Mound Sub-Area Plan, but they have a couple more recommendations to go before that can move out of the Planning Commission review process. And once it's out of Planning Commission, it will go to the UGM, Urban Growth Management, I think is the acronym for that subcommittee with TRPC, Thurston Regional Planning Council. They'll make another recommendation on the UGA amendments, and then that will come to the Board of County Commissioners for review. So we do expect to be through that plan this year. We've made significant progress. It's a complex and a high level of public engagement, so it's taken a long time to move through Planning Commission.
And then one of the things I know that happened, because we got a letter on it, was one of the proposal, we embedded a lot of proposals within that plan's review. One of them was related to Black Lake Quarry, and it was like they wanted to do one thing. I think it was a UGA expansion, but they realized it was going to be maybe better for everyone if they did a rezone request, and they switched. And I wasn't sure if they were gonna be forced to be subject to this analysis and review, or if they could just sort of, it could be I mean, I don't see them on the list, so I'm wondering, that's telling me that we're able to, I didn't want it to slow the whole Grand Mound, bundle down, but I mean, I wanted them to do the right thing for their project, but I didn't want it to, but because they're embedded and connected to all these other projects in the sub-area plan, I was concerned about that. So I'm happy to not see them on this list subject to this new thing, because it's really just an evolution of what you guys have already been working on. Is that accurate, or is there some wrinkle there?
That's correct. So that they had a secondary request, and that'll be something that the Board of County Commissioners can consider once Grand Mound comes to the county commissioners, even though it wouldn't involve a UGA amendment, their secondary request. The board can still consider developing a new option that goes forward to public hearing. So there's flexibility with that. It'll still move forward with the Grand Mound sub-area plan.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, thank you. And then let's see, I was writing random stuff down. Those are the main questions I had related to this decision point. I still, I think, as a heads up, when you guys develop budget requests for next year, I want to know, the board has consistently talked about staffing and how to get these projects through. I'd like to be able to, not to hem ourselves in, but I'd like to be able to create a system where projects on average take the 2-year docket cycle and get done. Now, maybe that excludes some super big ticket items like you outlined that just might, wouldn't be practical. But I'd like to know at budget time, how many more, you've got 5 planners, how many more would you need, given the little estimate you said you can do 5 to 10 in a year, but so that the average number of projects that get filed, and commissioners it seems like we tend to accept, 85% of them or so. I mean, come up with some guesstimates, like how many more bodies would you need so that we could look to the commissioners could look in the public in the face and say, you apply on this, no promises, but if you get docketed, we should be able to get you to the finish line in 2 years, according to our docket cycle. If that's 4 people, if that's 2 people, if that's 7 people, the board, I think, needs to know that, because every year we talk about this problem and how to get the timelines consistent and predictable for the applicants. And, you know, maybe we can't afford, you know, the amount of people you need, but I'd like a little bit of like, you know, back of the napkin analysis at least on that, so that we could at least chew on it.
I'm gonna
I'll
jump
let
in.
it go. Yeah.
Sorry. So let me jump in, Commissioner Minzer, because at the very beginning, that is exactly the point that we're working to address. So we think of the, how to move a docket item quicker. I think that 2-year goal is right on. The staff resources, we are always cautious of adding staff resources in terms of government taxpayer dollar. We want to make sure that we're efficient in the process. External resources, we've looked at adding external resources. We have consultants on current docket items for technical expertise. Really, right now, what we're examining is the process. But how fast can we move these items with the right communication that the planning commission needs to get a recommendation to the board, so the board has all the information it needs to make a decision. So we want to be judicious in asking for new staff. We will put it on our radar. Obviously, it is. We always work with the budget office, given this is general fund funded, to make sure that we're asking for what we need and that we have our process in place. So really, we're examining analyzing our process right now. But be assured that if we need staff resources to increase to get to that 2-year goal, we will. And I think that's helpful to recognize that we have a goal of completing a standard docket item in 2 years. And what we need at this point is truly an analysis on the process. You think of the wireless code or some of the emergency housing ordinance that had 9 to 15 back and forths with the planning commission. That time is directly related to the completion of a docket item. So just know, Commissioner Minzer, we appreciate the support, and we will definitely bring forward any additional staff resources that we think are going to be important to help the process.
Sounds good. And I guess one last question. Out of all these items that are new, you know, if the board said, no, you know, we really want to finish this cycle and we're not going to add new stuff on and create delays, is there any item, I'm not seeing it, that's why I'm going to ask just to check myself. I'm not seeing an item where it's like, oh my gosh, this is super time sensitive. This one, if it doesn't happen this year, it's, you know, can't happen, or, you know, or there's new information that really makes this something that, you know, we backburnered, but there's some, you know, incredibly new information that would cause us to really need to reassess adding to the doc. I'm not seeing an item like that. Do you guys feel like there is one?
So I think
Josh,
from staff's perspective, we would look at legal risks, and Maya, Chris, are any of those pushing up the county against a legal risk?
No, none of those particular requests that came in new are pushing against any law changes.
Maya?
I would agree with that statement. There are no time-sensitive requests in terms of staff-initiated proposals. We just are always sensitive to, you know, these are citizen time as well, so.
okay, thank you.
I might have it time sensitive. I actually want to add a matter to be considered. And I reviewed what Kitsap County did in terms of the high-risk facilities, and what they did is they amended regulations for high-risk secured facilities. So that's something that I would like to see if it's a possibility for our own docket item and for it to go through the process on it. Just in kind of reviewing things that they've kind of prepared themselves, I think, for the long term, and I think that's something that Thurston County should definitely look at and see if it's a possibility.
Is that related to Supreme Living?
Well, it's related.
Related
it's
to that type of activities?
To that type of
Okay, got it.
activities, yeah. So it was something that someone mentioned yesterday. I went to kind of look at their code. I saw that they amended it in 2019 is when they went through their docket process and amended their code for high-risk facilities. So I think it's something that maybe we should look into updating, if we don't have it, maybe creating something similar to that. So
Do you have the code citation from Kitsap that you could forward to us?
I can forward you the whole thing.
Thank you.
Yeah. But that's something that, you know, I would like to be considered for this time around, you know.
So let us look at that and see what process it needs to go through.
Perfect. In terms of, I don't have, really any questions. I'm ready to move forward with option 2. And I think it's always good to hear public comment, hear kind of what the public has to say on some of the items. While I understand it takes staff time away from other projects, I think it's something that we have to balance out with, having that public engagement when it comes to certain docket items. And so for me, I'm kind of leaning, and I'm wondering if we can go ahead and, I think I've heard from kind of each commissioner where their mindset is at. It says decision requested on here today, so I'm wondering if we made a decision today, you know, that way there's something less on the 24th.
No, and the 24 is just to give you the space for you to think about the request. There is nothing in code or any risk associated with the magic date of January 24th. Is the practice is we as a staff cannot be presumptuous that you will be making a very critical decision on the spot. Because we heard in the past, the board doesn't like to be making decisions on the spot. So we try to be cognizant of that time. So, but certainly you can be making the decisions today, as you see fit. And I just want to be cautious about what I've heard in the past and give you the space to think about any potential decisions.
I mean, for me, I'm leaning toward option 1 because when you've got, when you've got the shoreline program, the joint plans, the agricultural study, the forest and tree protection, all these things are huge and we need to get them done. And I mean, I'll just say, I'm not very happy. I've been championing the joint plan, the Lacey joint plan, since the day I took office as a commissioner. And it's 4 years and Maya just said, we're going to start that one like this year. That upsets me. That is a top priority, at least in my estimation. That is the #1 priority for economic development in this county. That is where all the growth is happening. That is where we hit in a roadblock after roadblock and stumble after stumble with projects. And yet we're 4 years into my tenure as a commissioner and we're just getting going. And I never heard Commissioner Edwards or Commissioner Hutchings or Commissioner Mejia disagree with me. We always put those joint plans. They were at the bottom when I took office, and they've been in the top third of the priority list the entire 4 years I've served. So to just keep dumping new items if there's no time sensitivity, I'm not, I'd like to take till the 24th because I want to look at these a little more carefully and see if I see something that really needs to go on there. But I'd like to get these key items done.
Okay,
So that's where I do that.
go ahead.
We're still going, right?
Yeah.
I'm willing to start today. I want to vote on it and vote on it today is where I'm coming from. Because we work for the public and I believe we should listen to the public. And I don't think we ought to have any more delays. I think we ought to start on your project added to this list, this sex offender house. Because I think the state is putting the screws to the public. And we need to come up with some regulation to offset this. And so I want to start on that yesterday, not today. So that's where I'm at. I want to get with it, get on it. Let's get something moving. If we prioritize something, I certainly would want to prioritize the sex offender house to keep these folks on McNeil. As far as I'm concerned, they should never be released, ever. So that's where I'm at.
And I hear what you're saying, Commissioner Menzer, and I think that's been kind of, last year was, we went through the docket process. I had like a number in my mind of how many I wanted to add on. And the prioritization for me was on those items that had been on there for a long time and had been waiting and waiting and waiting. And that's how I prioritize them. And that's why the ground mound was one of the top priorities, I think, for the three of us. And it went all the way to the top was because it's been kind of on this stalemate for a long time. And I think that's when I'm looking towards staff and asking what you just said of what are the staffing requirements that, you know, that are needed to get some of these items moving along? And making them either on a 2-year rotation, making sure that we're working through them. But I think it's still good to hear from the public, even if we don't add anything on to the docket. I think it's just good to kind of always get some public input, and just hear kind of either, you know, like the priorities on, and there's some items that we have on the preliminary docket, and maybe there's some new information that's coming up, but, I just, for me, I just want to hear from the public. I think it's always a good process. Even if we decide not to add one single item on there, I think it's just good to hear.
I just want to be respectful Commissioner Menser's request that he requested to delay this decision until Tuesday. So I just want to make sure that
I realize that. I want to go, I'm ready to go today. Get it over with.
So can I say two things? First one, if you look back at the successes of, on page 8, there are some big items that the staff was able to accomplish in this last year. The habitat conservation plan, the low impact development, the emergency housing ordinance. These items had been on this conversation for 5 to 10 years, depending upon where you got on the carousel. So first off, our staff has done an amazing job with what we've got in process. The second piece, in terms of public input, I think there's two, defining public input might be important. You can receive whatever public input you can in an informal way, reach out to constituents, reach out to residents and citizens, or you can take that next level to formal input, and that's the public hearing. So I think that it's important to kind of consider what public input means to you. If you take that little bit of time to the 24th and receive public input to kind of help inform your decisions, that doesn't delay our process the 3 months. If we go to the public hearing, it will impact Maya's workload, and she's one of our star players. And it will push those other items that the board has already affirmed. I'd like to change option 1 from do nothing to affirm board's previous decision. I think that's a more clear way to say what option 1 is. But either way, it's great with staff. We're open to receive.
And can I just clarify?
Please.
The comment period is not a public hearing.
Thank you.
It's a written,
Thank you.
it's a formal written comment period. We take in those comments. Staff then puts them together in a packet and provides them to the Board of County Commissioners. So
in a formal briefing.
in a formal briefing, correct. So there
But
is a
if
bit
we're
more.
going to do the process at all, everybody, all those comment periods, we're back to, you know, we've got, that's the second item pointed out, that we need to have a 20-day comment period. It's just part of this bureaucratic process of delay. And that's what it all is the government has come up with this to impede folks from doing business until they can scrutinize and see if they want to pick winners or losers. That's the bottom line here. We've got personal agendas in play here that are hidden under the table, and I'm sick and tired of it. I want to get the process moving. And if we start today, then it's moving 1 week faster than if we would have waited 1 more week. Doesn't mean we have to do anything, but let's get it rolling. Let's do something. Let's not keep sitting on our hands. Let's get the work done.
So it is 10:03. I want to be respectful of, even though I know where I'm at, I want to be respectful of Commissioner Menser's request to wait until January 24th for a decision.
If you guys want to, I mean, if you guys know where you're at, then, you know, it's not going to change anything. So it would just change my vote to a yes, because I don't really have a lot of grief about the comment period. So I'll just vote no. You guys vote yes, and you'll get what you want. That's fine. It's not going to change anything to wait till the 24th.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Okay, so are you sure? I mean, I just want to make sure that you're having the right time that you need to either think about things or I want to be respectful of your decision-making process as well.
It's fine. I've, it's not, it's fine. The main, the consequence of this decision is some delay. Hopefully not as much as was characterized, but some delay on all of the important items the staff's working on. The bigger decision will be whether we, in fact, vote to add items to staff workload without hiring new staff to do the work. So it's a small piece, versus the larger decisions that we'll have coming up. So I'll vote for option 1, you guys vote for option 2, and we just get going.
Can you verbalize that?
Okay, so Commissioner Edwards,
I want option 2.
Commissioner Menzer,
Today, I'm favoring option 1.
option 2 for me.
Okay, thank you, commissioners.
County Manager, can we also add to that decision point to review the KITS app?
Yeah, we need to add whether that is a docket item or perhaps maybe administrative process. We need to assess that.
Yeah, I mean, I want to do that starting yesterday.
So I'll send
So
you
make it clear.
the code update that. And I thought maybe it might be since it's such a lengthy code update. And I didn't know if it was something that we had to start from scratch. So, okay, with that, Commissioner Menzer, did you freeze?
Well, I mean, I was just curious about that. I mean, this came up today.
Yes,
And so you guys want a 20-day comment period starting yesterday. Like the public doesn't even know what they're commenting on.
Yeah.
We don't even know what this proposal is. So isn't that going to delay the comment period if we want to include? Now, I think including Commissioner Mejia's idea is probably a good idea, but we got to know we got to have something for the public to comment on, right? So how's that work?
I'm just using that as an emphasis point myself.
I'll be,
I know we aren't starting this yesterday. I just want to get something done. These people expect us, we work for the public. I want to make sure they know damn well we're taking their situation in Tenino very seriously. So that's where I'm at.
I'll be sending that information over to Josh. And like, I just had an opportunity to review this last night. So that's kind of why I'm bringing this up. I mean, so last night I reviewed this. I thought maybe it might have to go on to the docket process. I'll share it with Josh, and I'll have my aide send it to both the other 2 commissioners so they can review it as well and kind of look into it. And then maybe Josh can give us some direction. If it can't be added onto this docket cycle, maybe there's a possibility that we can look at an interim, because I feel like that's kind of what Kitsap County did. They created this interim ordinance, and then after that, they kind of adopted the actual, and this is just from high level looking at what their process is. Then after that interim ordinance is when they went in and kind of made a formal code amendment.
That's a different approach. Yeah.
So that's just, it might not be something that gets added onto the docket. I just wanted to bring it up because it was something that I reviewed last night. And if it is something, but happy to share that information with commissioners.
I'm not questioning my seatmates. I think you guys are on point. I guess I'm looking for staff to, like, commissioner comes up with a good idea on the day of the decision on the public comment, what can be done with that interim ordinance? Is that a possibility? That sounds like the right approach, because we don't have to go through the same process, and we can see how it works. And then we need legal, obviously, because we know that the laws changed before.
Yeah,
since some of this
the
has
law
been done.
changed in 2021.
Yeah,
And Kitsap County enacted those code amendments in
2019.
So
Yeah.
I think we have to see how that relates, but I think the interim process seems to make sense before committing to a larger code amendment, which is more time consuming.
Let us review. Yeah.
Okay, so with that, it is 10:08 a.m. Thank you, commissioners, for this conversation today. Thank you, staff.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.